Obi-Doo, it's everyone's favorite boomer and vintage lens enthusiast, and this is like a follow-up video to the Canon 50mm 1:1.4 SSC FD, and it's on the Canon Z50. And previous, I took this lens to the park and under daylight conditions, shooting at f8, and I varied the ISO between 100 and 800 and a bunch of different shutter speeds, and I got really excellent results, but you would expect that. But really excellent results. That concerns the f1.4. This is what I call a telephoto lens, where you could zoom up, magnify some section of the screen, and still see a lot of fine detail. But it goes to 1.4, and what is that good for? Well, this is December. It's like the Christmas season. Everyone hangs up their festive lights, and a lot of town centers have decorations out. And I went to MOTOWN East, which is Morristown, New Jersey, and they have a green, and the whole green is like lit up with like lights, and a lot of the stores are festively decorated too. And I went there Sunday morning, like around a little after 6 o'clock, and it was overcast, which means that even if the sun rose or it starts to get light around 6:30, it was still dark enough to take advantage of f1.4. I started off at ISO 2000, and then I immediately went down to 2500, and shot a lot of stuff at f1.4. And of course, there's no depth of field at 1.4. So even if something's 100 feet away and something's 200 feet away, well, you can see the depth of field there. And even though at f8, in the daylight, if it got beautiful smooth bokeh, unbelievable smooth. But at f1.4, it's all chaotic and busy looking and funkadelic. Of course, these point lights of, say, Christmas decorations are overexposed. And I'm sure if I had adjusted the shutter speed exposed for these bright lights, you would see that they aren't as aberrated. The fact that they're overexposed and the system is capturing the light bouncing off all the elements, and it makes it look funky. And it doesn't seem to be consistent. One side and one picture seems like really weird, and then another picture on the other side seems really weird. And then later on in the day, when I stopped at the 2.8 f4, I need 5, 6, and 8. Well, you could see that it's the point lights were point lights. You know, so it's a fine performer. And this is the thing, if you look at extended images instead of the point specular highlights from lights, even though these lights were aberrated, and then you hit extended image next to it like a sign or something, the sign looked really nice. So it does capture really usable images at 1.4 if all the subject, like a storefront, is parallel and perpendicular to this lens. You're going to get excellent results. It's just that the bokeh and the depth of field is related to bokeh, and when you're at 1.4 and you have shallow depth of field, the bokeh gets all crazy. And we're going to see that in the following slideshow. But still, this is a nice lens, and I highly recommend it. Now, one of the things with the shallow depth of field and this crazy bokeh is you can get creative with it, you know. And once you learn how to master it, then you can take some really great pictures with it. And it's lightweight with this camera. It's not super lightweight, but it's not like a heavy beast that you feel like you're going to have your head chopped off with it. And you know, in the cold weather, if it's below 30, make sure you bring an extra battery. And it's a good thing I did, because the battery gets weak under cold weather, and I had to swap out the battery. So rather than discuss it endlessly, let's go look at some pictures. But I just want to make one thing before we do that. And in this camera, the Z50, in the menu, they have a thing. It's under the camera icon, active D-lighting. I moved it to high. And as I explained previously, it seems to expand your gamma. But then you want to post-process some and reduce the gamma, and maybe boost the contrast and the saturation a little bit. But then, you know, it's really worth doing that. I find that I like the effect in the pictures I get, and I could highly recommend that you should do that too. So let's jump right into the pictures. Oh, and I just want to mention, that's the only thing I did to these pictures, is just to gamma. I didn't sharpen them or do any other shenanigans like that. So let's jump right into. Oh, and that's another thing you're going to see in the slideshow. Is this was not as much as a flare beast as I thought it would be. Probably because I had the lens hood on and it was cutting out stray light. But even the lights didn't seem to be like making flare balls or anything like that. But let's jump into pictures and then you can see for yourself. This used to be a bank, but now it's a bunch of other different things. And as across the street, there's this reasonably parallel and perpendicular, so everything came out sharp looking. There are no overblown highlights. And now here's a shut down street. I focus on that Coca-Cola sign, and you can see everything else is pretty much out of the depth of field. And that's the thing with f1.4. It's a very challenging lens to use and get decent pictures. And so I took some pictures as experiments, and you're seeing the results of these experiments and what works and what doesn't work. So here, all the lights, oh, they're blown out. The highlights are blown out. And even though it may be properly exposed, these highlights they're just blown out. So if you look at some detail, the details are actually not too bad. Now, one of the problems is the Z50, it doesn't have great high ISO. And you know, 1250 isn't really high ISO, really. It used to be high ISO. It's not as bad as older cameras, but it still has some high ISO noisiness to it. And you can see all the highlights are blown out, and it just doesn't look right. This doesn't look too bad, but the depth of field, they look blurry. So here's the statue, it looks reasonably sharp, and that tree on the left is only slightly behind it, but it looks completely out of focus. Whereas this tree looks pretty decent. It's stuck in a corner, the lighting is even, and you know, there's even some fine detail. This is a corner shot. You can read the lunch tag there. Now here's that fountain again, and it looks reasonably sharp, and even the trees in the back look reasonably sharp. The guy's face and the lady have some detail, but all those lights are apparated. Here's a lower right-hand corner of that same picture. This to show you what happens. Look at the Nutcracker. His buka looks really normal, and you can see detail in the statues in front. Now here I focused on the church, but everything else came out blurry looking. I don't know. Now it's interesting. The lights on the right there, they look blurry. But all the extended images that are properly exposed, they look normal. Now, at f1.4, if I was to expose just for the lights, then I think everything else would be this one wall of black. So it's very challenging to focus and get a proper exposure at low light levels with a f1.4. I see, I used to think this is aberration, but that's just overexposure. Because if you look at this sanctuary, this church sanctuary, that's a reasonably sharp picture. I mean, just think that's an enlarged crop, you know, to fit this screen. And here again, if you look at the buildings, they're properly exposed and they look pretty decent, but the lights do not. Here's a perfect example where the street lamp is overexposed. And look at the Funkadelic lights along the top. And here's the church again, and the church looks decent, but the lights do not. I don't know what to say. So if you want to use the f1.4, you have to have things that are moderate to far away. They have to be perpendicular and parallel to the lens, and then you're good to go. Here's a picture of just a church, and it looks like a really nice picture, really, of a church at night with dramatic lighting. And you can see some detail in the clock face and on the bricks. So I have two other f1.4s that I got to run through their paces. Here, look at the East 124. It looks really decent. And based on what I'm learning, I'm going to start taking different pictures with those lenses. And we'll see if there's any difference. Look at the sharpness of the branches. Look at the detail in the bricks. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the lens. And here, look, here's the manger. What was I, like 6 feet away or something? And it came out really good. I was surprised. Really good. They don't have the baby Jesus in there because everyone wants to steal them. This church looks like some sort of fortress. And they got this dramatic lighting, and it just looks, I'd like to take pictures of it. And here's a crop section. It looks really nice at f1.4. Here's a shot down the street at f1.4. Of course, the street lamps are overexposed, but the signs look really reasonably, and even the storefronts looked good. And here's the white church. There's the old church and the white church, and look at the detail there at f1.4. You know, it's capable of doing excellent work as it's got picture subjects. And if you notice, the pictures that look the best are evenly illuminated. This one is actually pretty good because you can see what's in the manger, you can see what's in the background. Look at this one. This one is the terrorists. And it was pitch black. I was standing there, it looked pitch black. So this is like a night vision lens in a way, you know. I mean, this is right before sunrise. You know, sunrise wasn't for like another 25 minutes or something. So it was real just street lighting. So here's a storefront, a building front. Looks reasonably sharp. And even the reflections in the window look pretty decent. Whatever light they're shining on this church gave a very natural look as opposed to the other illumination. Here's Bella Oxmix and his dog Peaches. Yeah, that came out pretty decent. I'm happy with that. You know what? Sometimes I think, oh, I should take 6 pictures in a row, vary to focus a teeny weeny little bit. Primo Hoagies. There used to be some other store here, but they went out of business. So this is a new store. Old-fashioned style. Primo Hoagies. See how long they last. Well, Chef Frady, he's been there for years. So, you know, he's doing all right. And notice his storefront was across the street. Maybe it's like 40 feet away. It's roughly parallel. Same thing with the pastrami house, delicatessen, across the street, roughly parallel and perpendicular. Came out sharp looking. And that's where the f1.4 will shine because of the shallow depth of field. And you think, well, you know, if I focus on these street signs in the foreground, well, the background looks blurry. Now here I stop down to f2 and look at the difference. Fig and Lily Garden, man, that looks nice and sharp. There is some, the light of the sky starting to get bright. Here I stop down to f4, and you can see how sharp those lights are without any blooming or any aberrations. Now, if I had boosted the gain or used a slower shutter speed, I could have got more blooming. This is intentional camera movement. I sort of like this one. You never know what's going to happen with intentional camera movement. This is only slight camera movement. I tried to hold the camera as steady as possible at 0.13 seconds, and it's the results I got. f2.8 at 1/50th of a second. Yeah. Of course, these are reflections in the window. If you focus on the window, then reflections are going to be out of focus. There's very weak sunrise, but I mean, it looked dramatic with the trees and the church steeple. And of course, since these are f5.6, everything looks sharp. So what happens as the sky got bright and most of the other surfaces got illuminated, then the exposure became more even rather than just having these bright lights against a low illuminated background. Well, I don't know. You know, I guess I could have shot at f1.4 and 160 ISO and see what happened, which I will have to do in the future. But the f1.4 aperture is a tough aperture. I mean, it is tough. There's no doubt about it. It's shallow depth of field. You know, it's anything that's bright is going to be overexposed as something that's not bright. And that's just the way that's going to work. If you look at these pictures down the street, of course, these were at 5.6. They came out really good. I mean, here's another crop. That came out really nice. I like that. It almost looks like I used a telephoto lens. So basically, it looks like if you want to take pictures of Christmas lights on trees, you should do it at dawn or dusk, and stop down at f5.6, and you're going to get really good results. Here's the Frog restaurant. Here's a string of lights. They look like lights, not like blobby blobs. Of course, when you stop down, you get the sunbursts. Of course, you got aperture blades. Here's some derelict clock that's right twice a day. But how do you know at what time it's right twice a day? That's the thing. You would have to have a working clock to compare it with. Local legends. Oh, notice there's no distortion, right? No distortion, no pin cushion, no barrel. So it's a really nice lens in that respect too. And here's a Windows. A Windows, it worked really good in Windows. I was across the street when I took that picture. Look at the detail of this crop, of the detail in the pillars. And look at their Citizens Bank. I liked it because it was green. I like the juxtaposition of the white and the yellow and orange. It's Real Creamery. They're new. I haven't seen them last time I was there. You know, f1.4. I mean, it's only a little bit faster. It's a stop faster, and it's only a little bit more extra premium. And I could see getting one. Maybe just a little bit more bulky and a little bit more hefty in weight. But, you know, it allows you to try things. You know, if you want to, your photography, if you want a challenge, f1.4 is a challenge for you, without a doubt. I would recommend you get one, the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. It's a nice lens, all around a nice lens. And stop down, it's as good as any other lens. And here's some birds flying in formation. Get one now, before they're all gone.